Welcome to this edition of the Your Weekly Dose of Nonprofit Podcast, the podcast that delivers actionable items you can implement at your organization right away. I'm your host, Ephraim Gopin of 1832 Communications. Today, I'm really happy to have with us a video and storytelling expert, Reuben Herzl. Reuben, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ephraim. Thanks for having me, man.
A pleasure. Let's introduce you to our listeners, watchers, and readers. Reuben Herzl is a documentary video producer and director focused on helping nonprofits tell their stories through video. He's the founder of the video production studio Groundmaking. Since 2017, Groundmaking has served clients such as the California Community Foundation, Koreatown Youth and Community Center, Descanso Gardens, and the Trust for Public Land. In 2019, Reuben was a speaker at the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference with a talk titled Video Production in Your Pocket. Prior to his video production career, Reuben was the chief creative officer at Aclima, a technology company that builds air quality measurement networks for customers such as Google and the California Air Resources Board. Prior to Aclima, Reuben worked as a designer in architecture studios in Philadelphia and Los Angeles. He holds a master's degree from the Yale School of Architecture and a bachelor's degree in international economics from the University of California, San Diego. Reuben is a certified advanced scuba diver, licensed commercial drone pilot, and loves running on any mountain trail he can find. He lives in San Diego with his wife, 3-year-old son, and rescue mutt Sienna. In today's episode, we're going to discuss video. Let's dive right in. Reuben, everyone has a smartphone. Everyone can record a video. What do they need to prepare in advance before hitting record?
Well, I guess now that everyone has something they can record on in their pocket, I think there's no excuse anymore. But I still think there's a few things you should do regardless of your budget before you hit record. And I was trying to come up with a clever acronym to help me remember. So I came up with SPICE. If you remember from Dune, the quote goes, "He who controls the spice controls the universe." And so in this world of video production, I think these 5 steps are super important. You really want to get, first of all, a scout of the location itself. So the SPICE goes scout, permission, interview, calendar, and equipment. You want to first get your bearings on the site. You want to ask yourself, if you're doing an interview, where are the bathrooms, right? That's going to be one of the basic questions someone's going to ask, and you just want to be able to point them in the direction of where they are. You want to know where the parking is. You want to know how the light is, if it's noisy or distracting, everything about the environment. So the scout is by far one of the most important first steps. You want to ask for permission, release forms, and make sure that folks are comfortable with what is expected of them in participating in the video. You want to actually interview them before you interview them on camera. Are they somebody who is comfortable sort of sharing their rock bottom stories, if you will? You want to know if there's certain boundaries that you want to be aware of there. And then C is for calendar. You want to have everybody on your team, as well as all the subjects and all the conference rooms you might be sort of booking, on a calendar that everyone can have access to. That's really important, just from clarity of mind before you hit record. You want to make sure that everybody knows where they should be and when. And the last step is not just equipment being E is for equipment, is just being your lights or your cameras or your sound equipment. You want to make sure you have everything you could possibly need on that day. If there's a distracting disco ball in your frame, you want to make sure you have a ladder to bring that down. So scout, permission, interview, calendar, and equipment.
That is an excellent acronym and a very easy way to remember what you need before hitting record. You have compared filming kids to nailing Jell-O to a wall. I happen to very much like that phrase. Please share with us tips on how to successfully film kids.
Well, before you even bring out the camera, you have to nail their parents or their guardians to a wall, because you really have to ask for permission, right? Make sure in your release forms you actually have the section that releases the minors. Anybody under the age of 18 years needs to have a parent or guardian sign off. And so, that's the first step in that process of filming kids, is make sure you have the permission. And if, say, you're doing a spotlight on one kid's story, having them sit down for an interview, I would say don't put your eggs all in one basket. Interview more than one kid, right? If as soon as you bring out the camera, or anything that is that feels just like out of the ordinary, right? At being asked questions by a complete stranger, kids can freeze up. Sure, they can, say the darndest things when you capture that, but make sure you have some backups in your interviews or in your stories. And when it comes to actually asking them questions, I would say with kids, and this applies to most anybody, not just kids, but ask for stories, not for answers. You might think about something in their past that for you might just seem like a really simple answer to ask them, but you might want to ask them instead, ask me, tell me a story about that favorite stuffed animal that you lost when you lost your home, right? You won't really talk about the home. You'll talk about the specific experience of that child. That's just one example. Another thing that is kind of neither here nor there is whether or not you want to be the fly on the wall that's capturing kids with, say, an iPhone, or if you want to actually take advantage of the fact that you have a distracting video camera at, in their presence. Some kids really love it, right? Because it's just like moths to a flame. They want to, gravitate towards it. And some, in some instances, if I've ever wanted to create a crowd of kids, I would just flip my LCD screen towards them, not even look at my frame, and just watch them flock to the camera to sort of watch themselves making faces at each other and being as a group. 2 kids becomes 4 and 8 and 12, before you know it. So I get down on your knees, get down to their perspective, right? Shoot them at their eye level. That's a really important tip. But yeah, I love shooting kids, and I say have fun with it.
Fantastic. I like that. Have fun. I know how nerve-wracking it can be, but definitely have fun. That's the most important. Today's actionable item. Please tell us 3 to 4 types of video a nonprofit should be recording and sharing with its audience, and why or how each type can help the organization further its mission.
Yeah, there's actually sure a dozen or so different types of videos. I actually have a blog post on my website that kind of breaks down 12 or so different types, but I'll just go over 4 that I always go to. Number 1 is the client or beneficiary testimonial. Like, this is an incredible tool that you can actually draw a lot of value from, not just from a video perspective, but you can draw quotes from it. You can, for publications or for print or for your website. That testimonial, I'd say, goes a long way. And it really represents to any prospective donor or anybody who doesn't know anything about your organization, who do you serve? And I think that's one of the most important questions you have to be able to answer with that. The second kind is, it kind of falls in the category of behind the scenes type of content. And it's not necessarily, just for social media. It could be an interview of your employees or the volunteers, the people who are actually behind the scenes doing the work of your organization. I think that content really answers the question to folks: who are you, right? It's an opportunity for you as an organization to show your personality and to show the faces of those people who are actually doing the hard work in the background. The third kind of video is more of a piece of evergreen content that I find folks benefit from. And it's the kind of content that you might make only every 3 to 5 years. And I call it an agency anthem or nonprofit anthem, right? It's something that, you would play to somebody who knows absolutely nothing about your organization. It just sort of shows any viewer what you stand for. And that's I think a really important anchor for everybody to go back to. And the last kind of video is related to donor impact, or to say videos that are focused on corporate partnerships. And I know I'm kind of grouping a couple different concepts into each other, but for me, this kind of video answers the question of who does your organization stand with to serve these folks and to do these things that the organization believes in. And for me, the kind of donor impact video is kind of a mishmash of a kind of testimonial as well as a kind of personal thank you. So it's kind of a testimonial in sort of showing what the donor experience can be like. But it's also a personal thank you in some instances I've found where it feels like you're making that one video for that one donor.
Yeah.
And that in itself is extremely powerful when you want to show thanks to that donor, but it just, it signals to other donors, this is what it's like, and this is what you can get out of this relationship.
Those are all four of those extremely important and definitely worth recording and then getting it out there to the masses. So you touched on this just now a little bit. Video is a wonderful and powerful way to tell a story. Your company, groundmaking.com, and here I'm quoting, "You capture moments that inspire others to think, act, and donate." What's your awesome sauce in making that happen?
Yeah, I think what's the awesome sauce? I think it's like, to me, it really comes down to focus. We don't do nonprofit work on the side, right? We're not shooting weddings and corporate videos and commercials and things of that sort. I decided years ago that the space itself, just needs a lot of support when it comes to marketing and video production. So for me, it was just, it pained me to see. And I guess a lot of the awesome sauce, I guess, is from that focus. And which basically means we can go deep on specific organizations. I remember being approached a few years ago by the Koreatown Youth and Community Center in Los Angeles. And the first thing they asked me was, we have a 30-second spot that we want to show in the Jumbotron in the Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles. And in 30 seconds, we want people to know who we are, know what we do, and know all these different things. And to me, I was just overwhelmed. Like, how in the world are you going to say all this in 30 seconds? And also, of all the people to help you do that is somebody who knows absolutely nothing about your organization. And so that was, they put a lot of faith in me in the process, and the process really required me to sit down with a bunch of employees and interview them, back to back to back, and really try to, cull a story out of that. And really the one insight I came up with in that process of interviewing everybody was that this organization was not just about Koreatown. It was about serving tons of different people from all around the world, a lot of Hispanic, Latin American immigrants who are served by this organization. And so the 30 seconds was more about showing the diversity of all those different people. And the only way we were able to do that was because we were able to go deep with the organization.
Okay, so your awesome sauce is concentrating on a specific niche sector and being amazing at it. I love it. I often talk about telling the story of one, using one service recipient to explain an organization's mission and show donors how their donation is solving a problem in their community. Since this is your expertise, how do you suggest a nonprofit go about choosing the right person to tell that story?
Well, I think there's the first kind of objection that some clients will kind of raise, which is the story of one is kind of a scary proposition, right? It's like, let's put all our eggs in just this one basket, right? And just sort of harkening back to this other thing I said before. And I always have to remind folks that, we're not making a video, we're building a library. So although that story of one might be for the specific touch point, you are going to be seeing this in context. So just to kind of deal with that objection, that's kind of how I recommend folks thinking about it. You're building a library of content. And my recommendation for finding that one person to really help you out is really looking for folks who have a narrative, not arc, but a circle. So there's this one gentleman that we interviewed for LA Family Housing a few years ago named Eric Montoya. And he's basically been, for 20 some odd years, he's been an outreach coordinator for LA Family Housing. And he's going down into the trenches of, the Sepulveda past, just finding those folks who are suffering the most from homelessness. And the circle in the story was that Eric used to be homeless himself and used to have that experience. And so that kind of narrative circle is just it's like the, how do you say, it's like the flywheel of a story, right? It just kind of feeds on itself. It helps in not only conveying to other, say, potential volunteers or employees. It's like it tells a story. It's a recruiting tool, but it's also just a sort of value statement from the organization, showing who do you serve, who are you, what do you stand for. It kind of helps in that ability. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but look for circles, look for narrative arcs that come back on themselves.
No, that's a very interesting way of thinking about it, because I've always been taught look for that arc, and what you're saying actually makes a lot of sense, especially in the nonprofit sector, where you can build that, you can form that circle in somebody's head where they were, where they are today, and how this organization helps them. So I very much like that. Let's move on to the lightning round and learn more about you. So what did get you started on your nonprofit career path?
Well, I didn't know I had a nonprofit career path until you asked. I didn't really think of it that way, but I guess it goes back to when I was in high school. You know, I always preferred making videos over writing term papers. So I tried to persuade my teachers and professors eventually in college that, you know, instead of writing this paper, I'm going to make a video about it. And most of the time they would say, okay, fine, because, you know, it's fun for me, and they, you know, it was fine. So I made a short film about Cask of Amontillado in high school. It's a short story by Edgar Allan Poe with a bunch of friends. And in college, while I was studying abroad in Budapest, Hungary, for this humanities course, I actually made a short kind of mini doc about street musicians in Budapest. And it was the first time I had actually sort of interviewed anybody in a kind of documentary sense. But I actually, you know, I diverged after college. I decided to go to architecture school and, you know, go down that path because I thought design, you know, was a really interesting path. But I ended up moonlighting on the side, kind of using my design thinking skills to help start a tech company actually in San Francisco called Aclima. And, you know, Aclima was an incredible opportunity. Let me step back. Aclima actually is like a environmental sensing network company, and they've built networks for Google or for, you know, city of San Francisco or all these different air pollution control districts throughout California and the United States. Basically, the you know, my role in the company was to help tell that really tough story about air pollution, how it impacts our health, how it impacts our planet. And so from a storytelling perspective, it was incredibly challenging. I learned a lot about it. But while I was at Aclima, I actually experienced the client side of hiring production companies to help tell that story. You know, we had these sort of small scale videographers who would help out. And then, you know, we had some larger budgets to you know, to really help launch the company with these videos. And I decided, you know, since I was in a leadership position, I thought, why can't we just do this in-house? Why can't I do that? You know, it's like goes back to writing term papers. It's like, well, why should I write a term paper when I can make a video? So I was always finding an excuse. But the silver lining was also just being exposed to, you know, in the startup world, in the tech world, we met a lot of philanthropists. It was in the early days of this whole concept of social impact and social enterprise and sustainability. These, you know, this is back in 2007, 8, 9 that I was learning these things. And so I decided, like, if I'm going to do this on my own, I'm going to focus, and maybe I can work at an agency. So I applied to an agency called Very Nice, led by Matthew Manos in Los Angeles. And they basically referred me for a project with the California Community Foundation to produce their annual report videos. And so it was 6 videos. I was a risky venture because that wasn't my kind of it wasn't my world yet. But yeah, that was the first project I got in LA.
Cool. So now that you've been working with nonprofits and you know a lot more about the sector, if there's one thing you
A
could
little
shake
more.
up, well, a lot more than a little. If there's one thing you could shake up in the nonprofit world, what would it be?
Yeah, I think I was doing a Google search a few years ago, um, on nonprofit rankings, whatever this was, and there was this one Google search result that pissed me off more than I was like expecting. It was the phrase, I think it was Charity Navigator. It had a tagline that went above it. It said, "Perfectly efficient charities."
Hmm.
And I was like, what does it mean to be a perfectly efficient charity? What are they actually measuring? And you kind of dig in a little bit deeper and you realize like what they're measuring to me is just it's a little bit, it just flies in the face of empathy. It flies in the face of like of where nonprofits could excel, which is taking risks in solving some of the world's hardest problems. Is it flies in the face of team building, donor efficiency, all this stuff. It's not something you'll see on a 990 form. Sorry to get like in
No,
there,
no.
but but this idea of a perfectly efficient donor dollar just kind of drives me insane.
I totally get it. You mentioned this before, so now we'll follow up. What did
Yeah.
you learn from your time as an architect in training?
Yeah, I think architecture. Well, I would not have met my wife if it wasn't for architecture. We met in a studio, Kenner Architects in Santa Monica. So thank you, architecture, for that. But yeah, I think a lot of the design thinking sort of tools in kind of you know making spaces work for human beings is part of it. But when it comes to filmmaking, it's kind of a superpower to be able to kind of break down a building and kind of know where, kind of be able to predict like where light is going to be, or where you need to kind of it's giving me that ability to kind of like break down space and to really appreciate it as a narrative tool, right? It's like everything in the background helps tell the story of a character if you're doing an interview of them. So I'm always thinking about how the architecture contributes to that story.
I like that. What license do you have from the FAA?
I am a certified commercial drone pilot under Part 107,
Aha.
which
And I
means I
see.
can fly and get paid to do it.
Cool. Okay. I saw that on your LinkedIn and I got curious as to what that was. Since you deal with nonprofits and you deal in video, a favorite all-time story, kid story.
Kid story. Well, yeah, I have to be biased here. My son has been like that favorite all-time story recently. It's not in the nonprofit sector work specifically, but it's just in the experience of watching him say be fascinated by the digestive system, right? By intestines, by the stomach and all this stuff. He'll make little Play-Doh models or whatever. But what I've been trying to do is just interview him, get these little snapshots of him just talking about how, the esophagus connects to the pyloric sphincter or whatever. It's just it's you asked me for favorite kids all-time story, but like I gotta say it's been with my son. Filming my son has been super fun.
No, that one wins. If it's with the kids and with the kid, and no, that wins automatically. Lastly, we will turn the table. You get to ask me one surprise question. I have no idea what's coming. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is hard, Ephraim. I I was trying to think of this phrase, comparison is the death of joy, right? Where if you're always comparing yourself to somebody or somebody else, you're just gonna like extinguish your motivation. Well, I was kind of thinking for myself, like who would that person be? And it's probably somebody you've never heard of. It's this documentary director, film director out of Italy. His name is Gianfranco Rossi, and he directed a film a few years ago called Fire at Sea, which was about the migrant crisis in southern Italy, from all the migrants coming on boats to this island called Lampedusa. Anyways, his work is amazing. I look up to him. Nobody's ever heard of him, but in my world, he's somewhere there, right? So in your world of expertise, right, marketing, communications, nonprofit sector, all that stuff, in your universe, like, who do you look up to that nobody has ever heard of?
It's funny because there are a lot of names in the field that I could use, but I'm going to use one that nobody's heard of simply because it's my grandfather. One of the things within my bio that a lot of people don't know is I'm a third generation nonprofit executive and fundraiser. And I go back to my grandfather, who was doing this already in the 40s and in the 50s. He was also a teacher. He was a rabbi of a synagogue, and then he went into real estate. But he, all the fundamentals that I have, he passed down to my father, and then I got it. And that's who I kind of look up to. I had a chance. I got his speeches that he said as a rabbi in synagogue back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And I got them in his handwriting, and I transcribed it, and I published a book just for the family. But I had a chance to see how he prepares, how he talks, how he looks at the certain, when he had to make an appeal from members of the synagogue for money, for whatever the cause was, and to see how he did his ask and how what he was saying and how he prepared the speech and everything else. That for me is my guiding light, because I learned preparation is the key to everything. And he wrote everything out word by word. And I have doubles and triples of certain speeches because he didn't like this. So he'd go back and rewrite the whole 4 pages again in a beautiful script. So that's kind of, I look at that and I say, that's my guiding light. If I get to be 10% like he, as successful and as good as he was, I've done my job.
That's cool.
That would be my, like you said, somebody who people don't know. I've got one. I got that also. Reuben, thank you very, very much for appearing on the podcast today. I encourage everyone to connect with Reuben on LinkedIn, and you can learn more about his work at groundmaking.com. It was a pleasure learning from you today, Reuben. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ephraim. See you later.
Have a good day.
Bye.